Hello, this is an assessment for restoration of a Steinway Model A grand piano that's 6 foot 1 inches long. It's called an old Model A because the modern Model A has 88 keys and this has 85 keys. So the old Model A, in terms of Steinways, this relatively high proportion of Steinways are Model A, old Model A's, and they have a very rich, warm tone, as we've mentioned many times before. I just wanted to have a look at the casework first. Look at the veneer on here. It's one of our favourites, really. We love repolishing these. It has been repolished. Doesn't need repolishing in terms of the actual finish of the polish, but it is faded in various places. This does happen if you have a piano repolished. Then if it's a very light place, then it will fade, and we can see a difference in colour there. But I think that's sort of normal. But I'm thinking about the top particularly, as we'll have a look at in a second. So there's the back of the top. That's the current colour, and if we lift it up here, you'll see what it was like when just after it was polished. Oh, the new colour is very pleasant. Light faded rosewood's very popular. But if you have piano repolish, I know I keep repeating this, but it's so important really to keep this down some of the time and up some of the time. Down mostly if you're not using the piano, and then obviously if you're playing it, you're going to lift it up like that, and then this will be an integral colour as well. I don't know what's happened here. There's some interesting lines that you don't normally get when the trade and want to comment on that. But look at the rosewood here. It's some of the very best. We just love repolishing these. So it doesn't need repolishing in the sense of having good polish on it, but just the colour's not integral. So it's very acceptable to look at. If you lift that and put that down, then perhaps not quite so acceptable. No veneer missing, in very good condition. Legs are always darker on these Steinways, and we try to finish them off a bit lighter than that if we do it ourselves. Key tops, so there's 85 keys, not 88. You can learn, you can go up right up to grade 8 with 85 keys, though 88 is standard for modern pianos. And some of these are lifting. You'll see some that have come right off here. That was nearly coming off, and there's two that have come off. The acoustic side of it is reasonable. The tuning pin has been restrung. You can tell that because these are larger tuning pins than they would be originally. And not that recently, looking at the colour of the bass strings, but they've been replaced as well. And the tuning pins are relatively tight. There was one here that was a bit loose, and I set that pin, and it's tighter now. So they're acceptable. I don't think, as long as you keep it in good, humidified room, above 40% humidity really, and below 21 degrees ideally, then you're not going to dry the piano out. Let's listen to the tone of it. And the hammers are letting it down. That point there, which you often get with old Model A's, is a bit thin, the tone of that point. But so if it was restrung, you could possibly increase the down bearing. That would help. You can see cracks on the soundboard. Now that's an indicator that the piano's dried out. Obviously if it dries out, then the planks separate slightly. That doesn't, as we mentioned a lot, trying to get that point across, that doesn't affect the tone too much. But obviously if you restring, then we will shim the soundboard. So I've mentioned many times before, and it's been refinished. These would normally be blackened over, so that's not been done. By the way, the date of the piano, 1893. In actual fact, the serial number suggests 1894, and this is right at the end of 93, so maybe the frame casting 93, and the piano is actually 1894. Whoever restored the piano left the serial number off. We try to put that back on normally, but it was found on the front rail and the cheek, so it's inside the piano basically, so you can identify it definitely, the right serial number. The lettering's been painted here and here. They're just not finished off really. That's often found actually, and that's not really a problem. Obviously it's something we would do ourselves if we had a piano to fully restore. There's one or two notes like this one. The hammer's not coming off the string because the jack's broken. We'll look at that in a minute. It's got a full tone to the top. And look at the hammers, but typically rich bass. This is one of the best basses of any piano really, for the size of the piano. And the new strings are good quality strings. Look at the action. You can see the hammers, shanks and rollers have been replaced. Not incredibly recently, I don't think. Same with the string. So it feels, I'm just feeling it there because I expect that to be soft. In other words, it's been voiced down the bottom end. It should be bricked deeply, really, down here, deep toning, and then less and less as you go up. Looking at the wear, we can see the hammer's not that worn. This is in the main playing area, and the indentation's not that obvious at all. And if we look at the roller here, that doesn't seem too worn either. Sorry, that's better. I couldn't focus it. So the jack's broken. It's not very common for jacks to be broken on Steinways. Down the bottom end, there's one missing altogether. If you look down there, and there's the bottom one there. So I have to check them all. I'm not sure why that should be, because it could only be through bad treatment, really, that they would break. No, it doesn't normally happen. So that one doesn't check at all because the jack's not coming out. What we mean by that is if we look here, the jack's not pulling out at all. So there's the jack's just pushing upwards and not pulling out at all. If we look at the one next to it, let's have a look at this side. Look at this side and the jack's pulling out. So it's on that button there and it's pulling out as it should do. But the jack on this side isn't pulling out because it's broken. It's just not, and if you can see the breakage there. And the ones at the bottom are missing altogether. An important aspect to check when you're doing a Steinway is whether the wood inside this rail needs changing. Basically, the whole rail is changed. If they're tight, if you can tighten them up. I've tried these few and they tighten up well. My colleague, when he gets hold of the action, will tighten them all up to just double check. But that one needs tightening up. So I don't think there's a problem, but sometimes they won't tighten up, and therefore the wood inside here needs replacing. So the whole rail gets replaced. In order to assess the action work properly, we decided we've got to take the piano, the action to bits and put it on the bench to investigate, because there were so many problems really involved with it. Well, we mentioned the first one, which is the broken jacks, and there's so many. If we just lift those up a minute, we can see the whippings. Many of the springs are weak; they're not working properly. We've got felts that are. There was one up here I saw earlier. Felts that are damaged, and quite a lot of issues. It's difficult to show them all up. In the end, we thought that trying to repair them was going to cost as much as it would to replace all the weapons, which are readily available. So we can put Steinway weapons from Steinway for this type of, for the older action. So those are the original weapons. These are some examples we've had for spares from other pianos, and that's the first thought, really. We must replace the weapons. I don't think there's any way around. Lever or weapon, these are called. And the other issue, or one of the other issues, is that the hammer shanks are just too thick. If we look at a Steinway hammer shank, this is from Steinway, you'll see the thinness and the lightness of that. And this is causing weight problems in the top. This is a more central one here. I meant to say the hammers as well aren't original. That's probably a Bösendorfer hammer. That's the colour you'd expect from Bösendorfer hammers. This is a more modern Steinway colour, and this is the old Steinway colour which we will put on. They're available in Steinways, so that's what we would normally put on. So we've got to rethink lots of things here to what's the best to do and try and do it economically as well. Very difficult. These keys, to compensate for the fact that the weight is too heavy, especially for the heavy shanks there, they put extra weights, you can see, in the keys. Now this one has not much room for any more weights, really. You can see not quite sure what's been done here, because we've got at the back there, we've got a weight, and at the front that doesn't make sense, because you could take that one out and plug it if you wanted it to be lighter and put more weight in the front. Well, I've gone on for a bit long, so hope that's helpful, though. Some kind of decision you've got to make, and obviously experience is, we're learning all the time, but experience is the key. If you're in the trade and would like to help us, then we'd be really grateful, because every job's a learning experience. But we've done plenty of old Steinways, so hopefully we're going to get a good result and as much like a new piano as possible. So here's a summary of the inspection, and you can see the things mentioned there. The pitch raise needs to be done. There won't be any problem breaking strings on that, and I think the tuning pins are tight enough. May need to set one or two more. So that's obviously an issue, and you need to look after the piano well in terms of humidity and temperature, trying to keep temperature low, humidity high generally. Well, not that high, but between say 45 and 70 is ideal as much as possible. Repair the jacks, regulate and weigh the action, and then voice the hammers. The hammers are very much in need of voicing. We'll have a quick listen to the piano. I won't sit down and play, I just play it one-handed to get some idea of the tone. So screws loose on the hammer rail. I don't think it needs replacing, but we'll have a look at that. There's a missing cheek screw, which is not significant. We can easily find one of those. And the key here is the weighting of the action, really quite varied. 60 grams is too high, 58. We're not 52 there, 50 and 48 is what we're aiming for normally. Unless you want it lighter or heavier, that would be what we'd normally aim. Perhaps slightly less. Say, my colleague says between 48 and 50 he aims for in the middle on the older Steinway, and it seems to feel right. There's a breakpoint mark there, and the B is a bit harsh. We mentioned about down bearing there, and the other breakpoint here, that's very good actually. That's the bass treble breakpoint. The bass strings, copper strings, and then steel strings breakpoint. Well, just play it briefly to get some idea of the tone. So in the middle here, well, that one there is jack not working, so quite varied the tone of it really. Just happened to be next to a night. Let's have a listen to comparison. Just a bit of sustained playing to get some idea of the potential of the piano. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much for listening.